Do you realize that your failures, your setbacks, your challenges that you've had along the way, like they're actually the missing ingredient, how you could actually like shape your gifts that no one else can offer, because you, as a parent, an entrepreneur, someone who's working away 9 to 5, who's had those different like wins and setbacks and failures and, different times that you've had, good seasons of life and struggles in life, like you are the only person that then has your combination of gifts, superpowers, and experiences, which means that you are the only person who can make the exact impact that you can make. And there are people out there who are waiting for you. They're waiting for you to realize that so that you can make an impact in their lives. I see it all the time. Parents and entrepreneurs, people who are worried, concerned, they're stressed, they don't think that they think they've been disqualified from being able to make that type of impact. I mean, I used to think that as well, like, that career setbacks would have, maybe prevented me from making the impacts I wanted to make, and I know I worked years towards promotions that never came. I watched projects that maybe I poured my entire heart into, just completely failed publicly. And eventually, like, I know I got pushed out of a role that, man, I'd been building an identity completely around. And when those things happen, we tend to, like, we hide from that failure, We often will tell, like, when people know the truth about that thing, like that the things I stumbled upon, the ways that I felt rejected, or been, even flat out failed as a part of that process, like that it would destroy your credibility. And I know that because, like I said, I felt this way. And so what did I do? It's what a lot of us do. We go into performance mode, which, it hurts so much when we're in performance mode. We smile, we share highlight reels, we watch people with these like perfect resumes, that they confidently just share what their expertise is, while we start to stay silent. We let it limit what we could do. We don't let our wisdom get out there because, like, the failure, had forged us in some way to change who we are. Now, I know for me, like, I didn't realize then, and I now realize, and I hope that so many of you could learn from this video, is that, like, setback isn't evidence of not being good enough at anything. Like, the setbacks, the failures, the struggles, the wins, all the things in between, like, they're training. It's the exact experience you need to develop the gifts that you have that, once again, no matter amount of success will ever actually give you if you're just trying to get success. It's the experience along the way that does that. Real empathy for others who are struggling, hard-won wisdom that doesn't work like just coming from anywhere, right? And resilience that can only come from getting knocked down and finding your way back up. Now, the great part is there's tons of data, science, research that backs this up, that 70% of people who face major adversity, like, they develop capabilities like they wouldn't have otherwise. They have stronger relationships, better inner strength, deeper meaning in their lives. Like, and that means your failures, once again, they're not wasted years or anything like that. They're a workshop. You workshopped your greatest gifts as a part of that. That's where you developed and forged these superpowers that you now have, that you could make an impact in the world. Now, I know I finally stopped hiding my story. I stopped pretending, and I started sharing the messy and honest truth about where I was, and I realized something very powerful, and you will too. People, they're not moved by success. They're moved by struggle. They're moved by seeing someone who's gotten to a certain place and that they could see themselves in their shoes. They could see them walking a similar path because, like, they saw themselves. They see themselves in your story. People have seen themselves in my story, and they found hope. That someone who had fallen that hard could stand back up and work their way through it. And so I learned this simple truth, that your failures, the things that have happened to you, they don't disqualify you. They're actually the things that do qualify you. The things that make, the things that make you unworthy are very often the experiences that are the most relatable and credible and capable of helping others. So we want to unpack that today. Let's dive into why your failures are that missing ingredient, and how the setbacks that you've tried to bury actually shape the gifts that no one else can offer. We're going to walk you through 5 areas, these 5 very specific areas that are going to help you to mine your setbacks for wisdom and turn scars into credentials and start serving from exactly the places where you felt the most broken. And to be clear, this isn't going to be like, I'm not glorifying failure in any way. We're not pretending that the failure doesn't hurt. Like, it's about realizing that the shame thrives on the secrecy, and it dies when, like, the honesty comes out. It's about learning to share your story in ways that helps others to heal as well. Because, like, while you're waiting to feel ready, you're waiting to get to that point where you can make an impact, someone else out there is struggling through the exact same thing that you've already survived. And you've now made it to the other side, and you've now got these gifts and superpowers and the experiences tied to it. So you're the only person that can make that impact. And they're not looking for someone who's perfect. They're looking for someone who's been there. They're looking for you. That's it. They're looking for you. And so if you've ever, like, carried your failures, like, their evidence against you, Have you ever thought like, man, I'll help others when I figure these things out. I'll figure out when I get there, I'll be ready. Like, no, like this conversation is going to be for you. Now, of course, I like to say to everybody when they're new here, welcome to the Giver Method channel. If you are new here, glad you're able to join us. If you're back for another video, welcome back. My name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder. I'm the author of the book called The Giver Method, and everything we're going to cover today is grounded specifically in the ideas in here. Now, right now, I put a link down in the description. It's available. You can get the book for as little as $2. Go get it on Amazon. You pause the video, go to Amazon, look up The Giver Method by Jake Talbert, or use the link in the description. Get yourself a copy. Now, the reason why is everything we talk about is grounded in this, and it's meant for people like you and I. It's meant for parents. I'm a parent of 3. Entrepreneurs. It's meant for the people, like I've been in that sea of cubicles in the corporate environment. Like it's meant for you. Everything in here, stories, action items, exercises designed to help you to discover your gifts and superpowers, step into who it is as you're meant to be, create impact, influence, have a more fulfilling life as a part of all that. Find your spark and bring it back into your life, right? You know, let's unpack like how you transform the most painful experiences into real purpose and connection. You know, that's going to be the biggest thing. So go, Greg said, go use the link, go on Amazon, get yourself a copy, maybe buy it for someone else who may need it. You could also go to thegivermethod.com, check out the other ways that we help people. Check us out on all the social media platforms under the handle of The Giver Method. If you're ready for more one-on-one support, maybe on extracting your gifts out of your failures, you know, then I've got a few coaching spots open you could check out. The link in the description about coaching. If you have a stage, a podcast, an event, some sort of a community where your people could benefit from this sort of a message, then check out the speaking and podcasting link below. And if this message like resonates with you, hit subscribe, tap that bell for notifications. Of course, like the video and drop comments along the way of what's landing for you. What part about your story are you ready to start reclaiming? And with that, let's just dive in. Let's start transforming. Like, let's look at how we take your failures and turn them into the credentials that they actually are, and so you can start using them day to day. And so the first of the 5 areas I want to focus on, it's all about finding the gold in what broke you, right? So it's the failure flashback. We gotta dip into it. Most people don't actually learn from their failures, which might shock you. They feel the sting, they carry the shame, and then they shove the whole thing down into some metal drawer that's labeled like never again, I don't want to unpack that thing. But the truth is, like, your failures, like, they're sitting on a fortune of wisdom that you've just never cashed in. They're not evidence against you. They're the actual training ground. So you've probably got gifts that come straight out of the fire, the wisdom, resilience, empathy, but because you've never stopped and named them, you've never actually looked, you can't see how valuable they actually are. And so this is where you have your gift blindness is coming from the fact that you're pushing these failures away. You think you're disqualified, but the truth is, like, you've been quietly qualifying yourself this entire time. So here's what I want you to do. You're going to take one failure that still stings a little, right? Something that you think, maybe think about quiet, in your quiet drive or late at night, that sting, right? It's not a weakness, it's data. It means like there's wisdom buried that you haven't claimed yet. And then you can grab a notebook or open a note on your phone and ask yourself 3 questions that are going to help you unpack this. Number 1, what did I lose? Number 2, what did I learn? And number 3, what strength did I what strength, gift, or whatever did that pain build? So number 1, what did I lose? Be honest about what was the true cost of that setback? What was the external or internal cost? Maybe it was money or opportunity or reputation, but it could also be like confidence or integrity or safety. Just be real. Name the loss. It creates space for growth when you're actually yeah, that's what I ended up missing out on because of that thing. And then once again, number 2 was what did you learn? And once again, I need you to go beyond just the generic cliche. The hard truths about the experience. What did they teach you about yourself, about people, about how the world really works? Maybe you learned that hustle doesn't guarantee success, or boundaries matter more than approval. Whatever that may be, write them down. Those are gold. And then the third thing, once again, what strength did that pain build? Now, once again, what specific capability came from it? Maybe it taught you patience under pressure, or discernment, when everything looked good on paper. Maybe empathy for people who are struggling in places like you have been before. Don't just say it made me stronger. What was the actual strength? Name it, and then you can fill in this sentence, right? My failure at blank, what was it? Taught me how to blank, whatever the specific capability is. And when specific challenges, or whatever this challenge, which now equips me to help these types of people navigate that type of struggle. That one sort of a sentence, that sort of a thing, it turns failure into something that you can't, you can't hide from, it gives you the credentials to stand on, And so when your identity starts to shift from this, I failed, to I've been forged, I've been created based off these things. When you do this exercise, you stop waiting to feel like worthy or you're ready to make that impact. You start realizing that you already earned that. Like, you already have the ability to do it through your lived experience. And that's the difference between like theory and trust. Like, people don't connect with perfect, they connect with the real. When you finally see your failures as proof of growth, not as evidence against you, then you're gonna stop hiding these things. You're gonna start helping more people, and your story starts to set more people free. Now that takes us to the second area. So once we can acknowledge what we learned, now it's great. What changed because you failed? How do we turn these wounds into wisdom? People, like most people, like they learned something. They know that maybe they learned something from their failures. But when you ask them like what exactly they learned, they'll freeze. They'll stop. Like, they know they grew because but they just can't name how. And if you can't name it, then you can't use it. And you end up carrying this priceless wisdom that you've never cashed in on. And so that's why this step, like this thing is all about, is turning those vague lessons into clear, powerful truths where you can actually go and share them. Because the most valuable wisdom usually hides in the gap between like you believed before and like you failed, and now what you know after. And so if you think about it, like the before your business crashed, maybe you believed success was about hustling harder, and after you learned like it's about working on the right things with the right people. Or before that career setback you had, you thought impressive titles mattered, and after you discovered that, hey, my alignment to who I am, my purpose, my values, brings me more fulfillment. Like that gap between the before and after, like that's where the wisdom changes lives. So what you want to do is pick a failure, pick something that you've already done some healing from. Maybe one that you've worked through in the last exercise or something like that. And then, open a blank note and just title it like my specific failure. And what I want you to do, like my, crashed business, my career setback, my failed relationship, whatever. And then you're going to write out 5 to 7 sentences using a simple format. Like, so it's before I failed at blank, whatever it was. I believed blank. Now, after I failed at whatever it was, now I know blank. And once again, don't settle for generic lines like, I learned to be stronger. Go deeper. I learned to work hard. Like, working harder doesn't matter if I'm working on the wrong things. Like, that's a better example of what that would look like. And once you've written them down, read them back. Look for a couple of things. Number one, look for like which one hits the hardest emotionally. The one that still makes you like nod and say like, yeah, that costs a lot. Number two is like which one feels like unique to your story. The insight someone like else wouldn't have unless they lived what you lived. And then number three, like which one of your past self like needed to hear the most, right? Like if you think back and you could have told yourself which one would have mattered the most, because that's usually the one that will help others the most too. And then you take a look at like the strongest insight and you put it, to use. You write a strong post like, man, 3 years ago I failed at blank, believing this assumption. Here's one thing I wish someone would have told me, and you tell them a truth. And if you're in that same spot, this might help you. Once again, whatever, like write a note to your past self. What do you wish you could have said to that version of you before it fell apart? Or use it in a conversation. Maybe someone's walking through something similar and you could share what you learned. Like, hey, I've been there, and here's what I wish I would have known back then. Because once again, that space that's between before and after, like that's where that superpower is going to live. The wisdom that you earned the hard way, like not from a book, not from theory, but because you actually, like you lived it. And when you put words to it, it shifts things for you. And honestly, about both sides, like, the naive assumptions that you had before and the clarity that you found after, like they both give you this permission to admit that you don't have to have it all figured out either. That's what makes you more relatable. That makes you, like, your wisdom land even harder for people. Don't let your failures stay like, hey, I learned something. Like, get specific with them. Turn them into like, hey, here's what I know now. Here's how it can help you. That's how you turn your story from this private pain into public purpose and making impact in others' lives. And the third area, you have to turn the shame that comes along with all those failures into a green light. This is a permission check, right? Most people never struggle to find wisdom in their failures. Like, they just struggle to believe that they're allowed to share it. You can have setbacks and they taught you these amazing things, but still hear that little voice like, yeah, but who are you to help anyone? Like that imposter syndrome that starts to set in, right? And so that wall keeps so many good-hearted people quiet. People from sharing, parents from sharing the things that they grew through a tough season, entrepreneurs about the person who rebuilt, everything, the employee who survived some career disappointments, whatever. Like, this permission check is about breaking down this sort of a wall that, makes you still think like, maybe I can't share. The experiences you're hiding, and the ones that make people trust you. And there's tons of studies that show that when leaders share relevant struggles authentically, like, they're going to create twice the amount of trust, than somebody who's just trying to present themselves as flawless, because people don't want perfect, they want real. So here's what I want you to do. Here's how you work through this. Set aside 20 minutes, take 10 to 20 minutes and open a fresh note and title it like My Permission Check. And you're going to list everything, like the failures or mistakes, that you still make you kind of cringe. The ones that might make you think like, man, if people knew about me, they'd never take me serious. Like, man, that time I got fired from a job or my business tanked, I blew all my money, I killed my credit, I ruined my relationship, the parenting season I still regret, whatever. Like, and now for each one, ask yourself a simple question like, if someone came to me right now going through this exact same thing, could I help them? What could I tell them that might make their road a little easier? And don't just answer like yes or no. Write down what you would say. Maybe you business owner drowning in debt, you like tell them, hey, get steady when your bills, like, so bills don't pile up. When you're maybe a parent, you'd like, hey, repair matters more than perfection. It's never too late to reconnect. Or maybe you're a person facing career setback and it's like, man, losing your job isn't the same as losing your worth. You still have value. Once again, start to notice something. Like, every failure that you thought disqualified you actually equipped you so much more. You know how to like walk people through the pain because you've already walked it. And once again, think about this, like the failure, my blank failure, like, it's not a disqualification. It's my credential to help these types of people, whoever they are, navigate whatever struggle, with the wisdom I learned along the way. Like, it's these type of power statements that help just remind you like what it is that you have to offer, because this sort of a practice rewires you to see yourself. It proves on paper that your scars aren't proof of a failure. They're proof that you've been through the real fire and learned, along the way. Shame will lose its grip on you. It's trying to hide, amongst all these things. And it's like, no, your silence doesn't protect your credibility. It actually just hides your power and prevents you from making the impact in other people's lives who need that from you. So instead of waiting to feel qualified, start recognizing that you already are, and your failures, like, they're the credentials that your voice matter. Your scars aren't something to cover up. Like, and they're the bridge that helps others cross the storm that you've already survived as a part of that. And that takes us to the fourth area, okay? Sharing failures without performing or dumping. Like, we need a framework to be authentic. Like, vulnerability that helps but doesn't hurt others. Because if we talk about how to share your story to people that make people lean in, and feel seen and walk away with something that they could use. Most of us like ping pong between two extremes, either hiding everything or we just dump everything. We unload everything on people. One keeps you distant, the other is going to overwhelm people. And there's a better way. Think of it as like the vulnerability with a job to do, right? You're not performing pain for applause or dumping details for relief. You're just offering hard-won wisdom to someone who's where you used to be. A parent, a founder, a teammate, whomever that may be, so that they don't have to learn it the expensive way you did. And yes, the data is on your side. Honest, relevant struggles shared, shared really well, it builds far more trust than any sort of polished perfection would. People don't want a superhero. They want the guide. They want the person who's walked that same trail that they've been on. And so here's what this looks like. Okay, 3 elements that you're going to pay attention to. There's what's relevant. There's how processed and in service, right? So let me break that down. So relevance, ask like, does this connect to what like they're facing right now? Like, if they're talking to entrepreneurs, like your product flop or crash, like, does that make sense? If you're a parent, your repair story after a rough season, like, that could hit home. If you're mentoring somebody else, your missed promotion or failed project, like, it has credibility. If the story doesn't serve their moment, then save it. Don't unload it. How does it serve them? Like, pay attention to that. And then the second thing, which was process, like, okay, can I pull out a clear lesson without getting swept away? Once again, like, I don't need to put a perfect bow on it, but there should be some steady enough way to name what you learn. That's what we talked about, these other principles. And if it's still raw, maybe process it privately first. Journal it, therapy, prayer, talk to a trusted friend, and then come back with clarity where you could talk about it. And then the third thing, which I said, is in service. So am I sharing this to help them, not to get something from them? Service sounds like, hey, here's what happened and what it taught me. Here's one thing that I think you could try. Not, hey, tell me I'm okay, or watch how inspiring my comeback is. Like, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to serve. We're trying to give of our gifts and superpowers without expecting anything in return. Quick gut check, like after you share, do people say, that helped? Or do they like start caretaking to you? Like, that's going to be the big thing. Like, and then you could tell this to them. Like, here's another way to look at it. Like, there's 3 beats in a story, 3 steps within a story, right? The first one is like what happened. Then it's like what it taught me. Something very specific, not vague. And then like how this helps. Okay, so what happened? Just context, like orient them. And my startup got out of, my startup business, like it ran away really fast. Like I had to let go of team I loved. I carried the shame, but like, hey, I was present, but emotionally checked out for years and my kids felt it. Like what, like fill in like what happened? And then what did it teach you? Once again, specific. Validate, like, hey, validate with real payments before you go build something. Pre-dashboards can hide broken unit of economics. Like, hey, hard work doesn't win if it's on the wrong priorities. Like, I learned to ask, like, what does leadership really value here? Like, think of those like more specifics. And then the third thing is how this helps you. And so one clear action. So if you're, talking to, in a business, like, go get 10 people to pay something before it's ready to ship, or hey, as a parent, like, try this tonight. Something, how it spoke to me, and here's how I practice it. Here's what you could do. As an employee, like, hey, before that next project, ask like these sort of questions. Like, give them a task thing that they could go do. And you could try it without pressure. Like, start by sharing something small, like that 3-beat story to someone trusted, and watch their body language. Do they lean in? Do they ask questions? Do they share their own story? That's a good sign. Maybe you need to adjust the dials. If they look overwhelmed, like shorten beat 1, the first part. If they look inspired, then maybe sharpen the third part. Like, and then scale up. Once you have that same story, how do you scale it up to more people, to your team, to client calls, to a short post, whatever? The same story beats that you could be doing, just tighter lines designed for the right people. Like, that's vulnerability. It's vulnerability without boundaries. Vulnerability with purpose, it builds trust. Like, that's what we're looking for. When you share like this, like, you're not asking if people to admire you or to pity you. Like, you're handing them a map of what you learned the hard way, and that kind of honestly creates more of a real connection and loyalty with customers and credibility at work, like connections with the people around you. Like, it's exactly how your scars become this bridge to someone else's really big breakthrough. And then the last thing here is like, there's this idea of like building your most like authentic work from what broke you. And so how you turn your failures into real fuel. And we'll roll through this one quickly, but by now, like, you've done some hard inner work and you've looked back, you've extracted these gifts, you've owned your story, you started sharing it on purpose. But like, here's where it all comes together, learning how to take those lessons and failures and build something from them. That's where your transformation moves, like from reflection to more activation, because most people stop just before this point. They process the failures privately, they learn a ton, maybe even grateful on their own, but they never take the next step to turning those into lessons in ways to serve others and really make impact in people's lives. When you like start to build your next move, like whether it's a business, a message, a program, whatever, like how you show up at home, like around the wisdom of your failures gave you, like everything shifts because you're not competing with a million polished experts out there. You're standing in your lane saying like, hey, I've been where I've been. Here's what I've learned, and I want to get it out there. Someone out there needs this, and I want them to get it and understand it, and I'm going to offer it to them. So here's how you do that. The first thing is like, you want to build like that failure resume, of the things like failure taught me how to get this specific skill for this circumstance. It's a fresh doc where you put your biggest setbacks in your career or business, relationship, parenting, finance, health, whatever, and you just say, hey, for this failure taught me how to do this, like this skill. When this circumstance happens, like, I know how to handle those things now. You're not making a list of mistakes. You're actually building a record of the capabilities. Like, man, my parenting guilt taught me how to repair connection instead of performing from perfection. Like, something like that. And then the second thing is like, spot your, like, the credibility gold mine, where you pick 3 failures and ask yourself like, okay, well, who's walking through this, what I went through? But be very specific. Name the kind of person that needs what you learned. Like, what do I know now that I wish I would have known then? What are those 5 to 7 truths that you gain? And then what does this give me permission to speak into? Because your failures give you access to a level of credibility someone without that experience could never touch, in so many ways. And then the third thing, make it a framework if you can. Gosh, take your biggest failures, one packed with the clearest lessons, and turn it into maybe 3 to 5 simple principles that someone else could follow. Maybe you've got like a scalable method of here's how you scale sustainably. You validate with your money, not compliments. You fix your foundation before you scale. You build for profit, not applause. Like, great, I want to build a framework for repair roadmap. Where I'm going to acknowledge the impact, not just the intention. I want to show up in small ways, in steady ways. I'm going to model accountability, not perfect. You just kind of write out, these are the 3 things you could go do. Anyone could go do these things, because your framework doesn't need to be fancy, but if it's real and easy for people to digest, man, that's better than any book or certification could ever do for someone. And then the next thing is you bring these lessons to life. You build something. You start small, you record a video sharing one lesson. You offer to host a conversation or lunch and learn about it. You create a short guide or a workshop, whatever. You're not trying. It doesn't have to be you're starting a business or anything. You're just hey, I want to lead. I want to lead people. I want to show people that they've got a better way. Hey, I learned the hard way, and I don't want you to have to. Man, that's credibility. That's authority, and that's service in action. Because as we walk through everything else, this is how it starts to redeem itself to failure. Because when you take what broke you and build it into something that helps others to heal or grow or avoid the same pain, your failure starts feeling like scars, or things you're trying to hide, but like signatures and purpose. Your setbacks don't sideline you, they shape you. And it's time to build from that truth. And so here's what we've uncovered. The failures, that's not any sort of an evidence against you. They're proof of what you've actually been through. They actually truthfully create you and forge you and create your greatest gifts and superpowers. That's how those are shaped. Empathy, wisdom, resilience, all through this, the stuff that success alone could never teach you. And it's not about pretending that failure feels good. It's about realizing that while you've been waiting to feel ready, someone out there is stuck. You're the only person with your combination of gifts, superpowers, and experiences. Someone out there is stuck and waiting for you to realize that, you could make an impact in their lives. They're just waiting for you to realize it. Please realize it and start taking action. Tons of data and science that 70% of people who face real adversity develop strengths they never would have without it. Stronger relationships, deeper meaning, more courage. And once again, that's not theory. It's happening inside you right now. You just have to go in and claim it. And so this week, just pick something we talked about. The permission check, the purposeful vulnerability, the failure flashback, whatever. Just whatever it is, start small. Pick one. Start today. Because transformation doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from owning it and cashing in on those lessons. Realizing failures position you to serve very specific people that need you right now. Your bankruptcy, tons of resources and things in there. Your career setback, your parenting struggles, your relationship break, all of those, they're not disqualifications. They are credentials, permission slips. They're proof that you've walked terrain and you're still carrying it, but you're now trying to make an impact in others as a part of it. And the confidence that people are chasing, it doesn't come from erasing these things or looking flawless. It comes from being forged and created through the fires that you've been through. From knowing that you've been knocked down and found your way back. The scar tissues is confidence. It's the kind that doesn't waver when life gets hard again in the future, because you've proven you could do it. Your setbacks, once again, they're not detours. They're training grounds preparing you for the work you were doing, that you're ready to do now. And when you use wisdom that you learn from those to help others, you redeem the very thing that once broke you. So stop pushing for a perfect closure of some kind. Stop hiding until your story feels tidy. Just stop trying to perform. Just start serving from where you are and leading with the lessons that you already have. Start building your most meaningful work on the very experiences that you thought maybe disqualified you, because when you do, you're going to notice something really powerful. People are drawn to you. They're not drawn to the highlight reels. They're motivated by your honesty. They see themselves in your story and they feel hope again. Now, if you want to dive deeper into this stuff, deeper into these topics, that's where getting yourself a copy of the GIVER method. Like I said, the link is in the description. Go get yourself a copy today. I've got it on sale right now for as little as $1.99. You use the link or pause the video, go to Amazon, check out the GIVER method. Check us out at thegivermethod.com. If you need some personal support, one-on-one coaching through your gifts and your failures and things like that, check out the coaching spots link down below. If you have a stage, a podcast, an event where this type of message would resonate with your people, check out the speaking and podcasting link. And of course, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and drop a comment on which of these things resonated the most with you. real quick, just remember, failures, like your failures, they're not the end of your story. They're the ingredients that allow you to make a greater impact. You know, your setbacks, like you've been hiding, are the exact experiences that shaped your gifts that no one else can offer, because you're the only person with your combination of gifts, experiences, superpowers, all those things. The wisdom you think is ordinary is extraordinary to someone else, and there are people waiting for it. So stop carrying around these failures like proof of not enough. Start recognizing them as the evidence that, man, you've been refined and prepared and equipped for this moment for the people who need you, because the gifts that you forged in your lowest moments, like, they aren't just signs of personal growth. They are superpowers that you could start using in the service of others. And that's when your story becomes unforgettable, and when you can have such real change, growth, and healing from your setbacks you've had in your past. So hopefully there's a lot of things you could take from that. Check out the other videos on the channel. There may be all sorts of things that you could take from those. Check us at thegivermethod.com for more details, and hopefully we'll catch you in our next video. Have a great rest of your day.